I've had people trying to get me to hop on the universal audio bandwagon for a very long time. And it's just something I haven't been overly interested in doing. Historically, you had to have their hardware to use their plugins. And from a cost perspective, their stuff it's usually been pricier, but lately they've been moving plugins more into native versions, and they're starting to compete a little more with sales and things like that. So they had a deal going on over Black Friday, and it was 99 cents to try out a bunch of their plugins for 3 months. So I thought, hey, I'll subscribe for 3 months for $1. I mean, why not? So today I want to compare some of their compressors to the versions of those same compressors that I've been using. Full disclosure, going into this, I'm probably going to be a little biased. I'm going to be comparing a lot of these to Waves versions because I've been using Waves plugins for a very long time. I've been on the Waves artist roster for, 10, 15, maybe more years. In their ambassador program and have affiliate links to their plugins down below. So I'm a big fan of Waves. I love those guys. I'm sure the Universal Audio stuff is going to be really good too, but I just, want to compare it. So to see, how much of a difference really is there between the UAD stuff and the stuff I've been using. I want to do this a little different than some people might approach this kind of thing because I'm really interested in how this stuff is going to sound in an actual mix. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've put together a rough mix. Some of the things I dialed in here, I started with the UAD versions and got them sounding the way I liked. And some of the other stuff I dialed in with things that I'm familiar with. After everything was dialed in, I calibrated the other version of the compressor to hopefully match the performance. So let me show you a quick example of how I'm calibrating these compressors. And, maybe it's not the perfect way to do it, but this is the way I'm doing it. So in order to calibrate these compressors, I have a separate calibration channel. Once I have the first version dialed in, I am just copying it down to that calibration channel. And then I'm adjusting this 1K tone into it to get a particular amount of gain reduction. So in this case, I'm going to be shooting for 5 dB of gain reduction. Now, the reason I'm doing this with a steady state tone is because I don't trust meter ballistics when they're actually moving in a lot of these plugins. The animations, they're just not all the same. The other thing that is going to be different, I'm sure, is, where the settings are on the compressors. They're not all quite going to be one-to-one. So I'm going to calibrate them for the same amount of gain reduction to begin with. In this case, I'm going to be checking it against a UAD LA3A. So let's get that up. So now I'm going to adjust the peak reduction to -5. All right. Let's see where those settings land. So you can see those settings, they're close, but they're not the same. Next up, I want to see what the output is. So I'm checking the output of this compressor. It is neg 15.7. Let's bypass that. Reset that. Neg 15.7, so pretty close. Whoops. 15.8, close enough. So now that I've got the same performance on them, I can put them back on the channel and check it in the mix. So let's check this acoustic guitar. if they're different, it seems pretty negligible to me. So I'll check them in solo, and let's hear them. I don't really notice a difference. So I'm going to stick with the CLA3A because I've been using that for years, and this one doesn't seem to be any better to me. So, all right, next up, I'm going to check out the LA2A. This is actually the LA2A plugin that Universal Audio was giving away for free in November of 2023. So I'm going to compare this to the CLA2A. In this case, I actually dialed it in with the UAD version first, so I'm going to start with that and then flip over to the Waves version. Again, really similar. I think I might slightly prefer the UAD version, but the differences to me are negligible. If I didn't already own the CLA2A, I don't think I would buy the UAD version because they're really similar. I'll solo it and compare it. Sonically, I mean, they're so close. I don't even know that I have a preference just listening to it now. For me, I own both of these. I don't know which one I'll lean on. I'm not someone who goes to LA2s a lot, but they both sound good. They both are doing what I would expect them to do. So let's move on. Next up, I'm going to look at the Distressor from Universal Audio against the Arouser plugin by Empirical Labs. The Arouser was basically Empirical Labs themselves creating sort of a Distressor in the box. One thing that you're going to notice that's a little different that I want to point out, the ratio here is at 4:1. And the ratio on the Arouser is at 6:1. The reason I did that was because Empirical Labs says in their documentation, if there's a setting you like on an analog Distressor, go one ratio higher on the Arouser plugin. And since the UAD Distressor, I'm just assuming they are really trying to emulate the analog hardware, I'm going to use that at 4:1, so I'm going to go 6:1 on the Arouser. And in this case, I believe I dialed this one in with the Distressor plugin. Let's just compare them. Once again, I'm not really hearing a difference in the mix on things. I mean, if I solo that snare, let's just see. I don't know what to tell you. I own the Arouser. I'm sticking with the Arouser. I don't see any reason to change between the two. If you already have the Distressor plugin, I don't know that you necessarily need the Arouser, though. I mean, that's part of why I'm looking at this. I mean, they both do great things. All right, let's stay on the drums a minute. How about this DBX 160 versus the Waves version of the 160? Which one am I going to start with? I'm going to start with the Waves one in this case. Okay, this one's interesting. These do sound different to me. Not necessarily night and day here. Let's solo them and listen. I feel like, I mean, they're both good. What's interesting to me is I feel like the Universal Audio 160, it's doing more compression a little bit. And where I'm really hearing that is if you just listen to the cymbal bleed between the two. Listen to that hi-hat. It's kind of getting a little smeary, definitely louder though on the Universal Audio version. The big thing for me though is I just prefer what the Waves version is doing to the transients rather than what the Universal Audio version is doing. I mean, I don't know that either one of these is right or wrong, but for me, personal preference, I like the Waves version better. So again, gonna stick with the Waves version. All right, now how about the API 2500? I'm gonna put this on Snare, and here we go. Okay, this is surprising to me. Hold on, I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna solo these. This one's a little surprising to me. When I was testing it out earlier, I preferred the UAD version. It wasn't a big difference, but I felt like in some of the other tests that I had done that the UAD one, it was a little thicker, and I kind of liked what it was doing with the transient a little more. The thing that was different earlier, though, was I had the thrust detector set to normal before. Let me just change that now and see what happens. That might change the performance, and I probably should recalibrate these. Okay, so I recalibrated the two API 2500s. The biggest change here is I changed the thrust detector from loud to normal. Again, I'm picking the Waves version, and I know earlier when I was testing these, I liked the UAD version a little bit better. I mean, just a tiny bit. I don't know. I think, gosh, that surprised me on this one, because when I'm listening to them now, I mean, the differences, they're so small, and if anything, I'm leaning more towards the Waves one because I like the transient on the Waves one just a little bit more. I think, if I had either one of these, I would make a mix work, but I already own the Waves version, so I don't really see a need to have this universal audio one. So that's interesting me. I'm surprised. I'm happy. I'm really glad, because I like it when I like the version I already own a little more or the same as another version. But API 2500. After the API one, I really want to look at some 1176s. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the Waves and the universal audio, and then I'm going to go all the way back to the BF76, which I haven't used in probably, gosh, I don't even know. It's been a really long time. I remember when the Bomb Factory stuff was brand spanking new. A lot of people today probably don't even know that Bomb Factory, it was a separate company. Bomb Factory Studios was actually a studio in Texas, I believe, and they put out those Bomb Factory plugins. And when they came out, they were a really big deal for everybody at the time. So let's compare it against all of this stuff. So here we go. Wow. Not a lot of difference to me between those. And that BF76, I don't know what you guys are hearing, but in here, it's holding up. So I don't know. I'm going to stick with the CLA 76 because I've been using it for so long. But, the other ones, they're, at least on snare drum, I mean, they're holding up. They're doing a thing. So, I mean, I know that Tom Loralgi loves that BF76, and I can understand why. I mean, it's working. So I guess if there's a takeaway from this, sometimes the differences we think that are in things, they're probably not as big as we actually think they are. It's easy for us as engineers to get biased to particular companies and particular graphic user interfaces. All of these things kind of play into how we feel about things. But when you just go by what you hear, a lot of times the differences, they're there, but they're not necessarily as large as we think they are. So should you use waves instead of universal audio, instead of, something else? I don't know. I think use the one that you like. I personally, I like the wave stuff. I'm sticking with the wave stuff. I'm even more convinced now after having gone through this little exercise that I am sticking with the wave stuff. But if you already own the universal audio versions of these plugins, I wouldn't run out to go get the waves versions. That's just my take. Hope you found this interesting. You can tell me how wrong everything I did was and how obvious some of the differences you heard are. You can put all that in the comments if you want, or if you heard something else and want to be constructive and actually have a discussion, you can do that down there too. But there you go. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.